You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Calling all new school counselors. If you're an intern, just graduated, or recently hired, this is for you. I have a brand new free training series for you called New School Counselor Bootcamp. And this 5-part training will be covering how to make the most of your internship, rocking the interview process, how to prepare your office, setting up for a successful and stress-free school year, and your first 30, 60, and 90-day to-do list. Summer is the perfect time to get started, so go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/bootcamp to sign up. Hey listeners, let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have to stress about planning your class lessons, small groups, and individual sessions anymore. My school counseling membership program, Impact, is here to help. So, what do Impact members get? Monthly curriculum plans across all 3 tiers, SEL lessons, small groups, individual, and seasonal activities, step-by-step video implementation guides, bi-weekly Zoom coaching calls with me, and an exclusive Facebook group community. This membership is designed for school counselors who want to deliver the best possible content to their students, but who also want to just press the easy button. You'll get access to monthly curriculum plans, resources, support, and community so you can deliver quality, engaging, life-changing counseling lessons to your kiddos. So what do you think? Are you ready to make an impact? Join today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So today I want to share with you for our final May episode 12 strategies you can use to increase your impact and get the recognition that you deserve. So the first 3 episodes of this month, we broke it down into scheduling, organization, and data collection. And I focused, kind of did a deep dive on one strategy per category. Well, now I'm going to go through and give you 12 additional strategies. Don't worry, I won't be diving as deep into these, but I definitely want to touch on them so you can implement the ones that speak to you, so you can continue to reach more students and advocate for your role. So let's go ahead and dive in because I have a lot of them here for you. So I've broken them down. There's 12 strategies, and I've broken them down by category: scheduling, organization, and data collection. So for scheduling, let's go ahead and check out the first 4 strategies. So up first, schedule a planning period. So teachers get one. Why can't you? Simple as that. I bet that you do not have a set planning period scheduled on your calendar. If you do, let me know and you're a rock star. But I bet you don't, because I know I didn't. And it's one of those things that once I started scheduling in, I'm like, wait a minute, I totally deserve this and totally need this time to make sure that I'm producing quality work for my students. So you might find that you don't have a lot of time to plan engaging lessons in groups. I mean, think about it. You have to find a video sometimes, plan an activity, put together a PowerPoint. Maybe you're cutting and pasting and prepping materials. It's a lot of work. So it's important to make sure that you have this time in your schedule. Now, you may not need a planning period every day, but a few times a week or even once a week can really make a difference. Because what this does is it prevents you from planning after hours. So maybe you're planning at nights or on weekends, and that's your own time, and that's not time for you to be planning your counseling lessons. So I recommend that you do it right there. Schedule yourself some time because you deserve it. Respect your own time, know your value and your worth. You deserve a planning period. Now, it's a win-win for everyone involved. It doesn't take away your personal time with family, friends, hobbies, whatever you're doing in the fringe hours. And then also your students deserve your top quality work and effort, and you're not going to be able to deliver that to them if you're having to do it late at night or on the weekends. So by scheduling in this designated planning period, it benefits everyone involved. Now, the second strategy I have for you: have teachers sign up for class lessons. Now, this sounds kind of simple, but think about it. I don't know how you're scheduling your class lessons now, but if I had to guess, it's probably via email and what I call the email yo-yo. You're asking teachers, what time should I come in? And let me check, and then back and forth, and it's taking up so much time, and you're wasting so much time doing it this way. So instead of you taking the initiative here, have the teachers sign up for your time. So there's a few ways you can do this. There's 3 tech tools specifically I want to mention. First, Google Sheets. So just list available times and share the sheet with teachers so they can fill in their ideal time. You can set this up at the beginning of the school year and then have them sign up for the entire year. So maybe, Miss Robinson wants Tuesdays at 11 a.m. once a month, first Tuesday of the month. Perfect. Have her sign up there, and then you can go ahead and schedule it all out on your Google Calendar, which is the second tech tool. So use a Google Calendar, Outlook, whatever you're using, some kind of digital calendar. Create an event for the class lesson. Send the teacher an invite using the event, and then you can simplify the process further by using reoccurring calendar invites. So this way the teacher gets a reminder like, oh yeah, Rachel's coming in to do the lesson on Tuesday. It's a great way to communicate without actively communicating, which takes your time. It's a way you can passively communicate by setting a reminder. The third tech tool you can use to schedule teacher lessons is Calendly. This one's probably my favorite. It's a free website where teachers can sign up for appointments with you. So you just put your availability in and it does the rest for you. It's super user-friendly and simple, and it can sync it with your calendar and their calendar to keep it consistent. So they just go in there and pick their ideal date and time, and you both get a notification and it added on your calendar. Could that be any better? It's literally the best thing ever. When I had a different podcast before this podcast, and it's one I used to do for other people who sell on TPT, and that podcast I would have guests on all the time, and I actually used this app to schedule with them that way, and it was so great. And I was like, where was this when I was scheduling with teachers? So the initial setup for teacher signups, you're going to have to learn these systems and communicate them with teachers. So you might have a little friction in the beginning, but it's totally worth it. It's way better than feeling stressed and wasting a lot of time contacting them each and every month to find out when to come in. Our number 3 strategy for scheduling is establishing a crisis response team protocol. So this one I could talk in depth about. I love this system, but I'm just going to briefly mention it here. Basically what this does is it helps you rid that feeling of constantly putting out fires and divvies up your responsibility. So as the counselor, you're likely skipping scheduled events that you have to deal with unexpected ones. So for example, a fight's happening and you're supposed to be teaching a friendship lesson and they call you to come intervene, and you're like, well, how could I be teaching a lesson on friendship right now or conflict resolution when a fight's happening? It seems counterintuitive, right? Clearly the fight takes priority. Well, that may be the case, but then guess what? Your lesson's never happening. Your Tier 1 interventions are never happening, and that's equally problematic. So if you establish a crisis response team protocol, you can respect everyone's time. What this does is it allows you to share the responsibility of this crisis intervention by creating a team. So there's a team and then there's the protocol. So the team consists of people who can help when a student's in crisis. So I want you to think of potential team members that you can use. These could be people like the school psychologist, an instructional coach, a behavior specialist, your principal. These are usually specialist people, so maybe a SLP, something like that. Perhaps even like a resource teacher who pops in and out, rather than a regular classroom teacher because they have more of a strict schedule. But these people usually are a little more fluid like you are, but make the whole team contribute. It's not your sole responsibility. And then the protocol is that you're going to determine who's responsible at which time and what actions will be taken. So what I encourage you to do is start by mapping out your day. Different people are responsible for different times. So get the day and give everyone a designated time window. And then you're going to have different shifts. So if a crisis occurs and it's during your shift, then you're responsible for it. But if it occurs at a time that's outside of your shift, that person's responsible for it. So this way, there's likely not a crisis every day, hopefully. So if there's not a crisis and you have that designated time and you don't have to go intervene, great. That gives you extra time, that freebie time I mentioned in a few episodes ago, that you can plan, do observations, or tackle your ongoing to-do list. So again, you want to treat this as a case-by-case basis and stay flexible, because you could sub out the person who's going to respond based on the child in need. So for example, if you've been seeing a kid every week for months and they're having a crisis, you maybe are the best person to respond, even though it was the principal's designated time or the SLP's designated time. So you want to be flexible and treat it case by case. But overall, if there's a crisis, By having a designated person who's going to respond, that eliminates, getting on the walkie-talkie, who can come? And then you're like, well, my thing's important. And they're like, well, my thing's important. And, everyone has something going on. But this system in place can help the situation work a little better. And you can get creative with the team members. So one of my schools, we even used our custodian to do this. I think I mentioned that in a previous podcast episode. I kind of go a little more in depth on the crisis response team protocol. But yeah, we even used our custodian. He had a great relationship with all the students. They all knew him by the first name. So he was someone that we used on our team. So having a crisis response team protocol respects everyone's time. Preventative class lessons are part of your job. Groups are part of your job. Individual counseling is part of your job. So you need to prioritize the time that you've committed to teachers and to students. So by having this response team protocol in place, you can ensure that you're getting to do your counseling duties and not show up for something that you have on your schedule because you get called to crisis, because the flip is you have a designated time for crisis. Again, it's kind of that idea of batching. So you can, be less stressed and rest assured knowing that you have designated times to do things. Because one of the best parts about this job, but also a stressful part, is that it changes every single day. Now, the final strategy I have for you under the heading of scheduling is to schedule reoccurring 8-week sessions with your individuals and groups. So sometimes, you may be stuck meeting with students indefinitely, and that's not good. We want to make sure that we have an end date so we can measure progress. So I love to use Google Calendar to schedule our student sessions. I'll find out the ideal time and day to meet with a student after I talk with their teacher. Make a reoccurring appointment on Google Calendar. You can use those reminders like I mentioned earlier. And then I just have it on repeat for 6 to 8 weeks. Kids function on expectations. So by them knowing that they have a standing appointment with you, that communicates to them that you respect your time with them and that you value their progress and their learning and that you're excited to meet with them. So I'm sure you feel that way 100%, but sometimes the student doesn't see that if you're just like, oh, stop by sometime next week, if you're randomly seeing them. But by having a consistent meeting time, it's, setting a clear expectation for them. And I think it makes them feel more comfortable and respected and loved, which is absolutely what we want to do. So a consistent and clear meeting time respects everyone's time. So how do these 4 scheduling strategies help us reach more students and advocate for our role? Well, first, it helps us reach more students because they allow us to clear space in our schedule. And when we clear space in our schedule, we can maximize our impact by seeing more kids. So time that we previously spent, planning things without a designated planning period, or time we spent in that yo-yo trying to schedule class lessons, or time we spent responding to crises and putting out fires, or times we spent just randomly seeing kids because we didn't have a consistent schedule. All of those things, once we have them scheduled into our day, they free up time that we can now use to help more students. And how does this help advocate for our position, further, helping us get the recognition that we deserve? Well, it shows our staff and our admin and parents and students, everyone really, that our time is valuable, and it helps get your counseling position and you specifically the recognition that you deserve. So by having a clear schedule, we can communicate the value and need for our role. Now I want to move into strategy number 5. These are all falling under the umbrella of organization. So the first one is a caseload spreadsheet. So what a caseload spreadsheet is, I mentioned earlier in 2 episodes ago, the counseling log spreadsheet. This is another spreadsheet that is an absolute must-have, and it's a caseload spreadsheet. So who is your caseload? Well, your caseload are those students that you're seeing individually or in groups. Remember, you're providing counseling services to all students in those Tier 1 interventions through your class lessons, but there are students that you're going to see additionally in small groups and individually, and those students are, I like to call them like on my caseload. So you want to keep track of them. So how you can do that is create a spreadsheet. I like to use Google Sheets. So let me tell you the categories you can use to get started. Now you can totally customize this to fit your needs, but these are the ones that I recommend you include on your caseload spreadsheet. So have the student's name, teacher, grade level, area of need. So again, this is going to be like anger management, grief, self-esteem, whatever you're working on or why they're in counseling. The counseling types, you're going to indicate if they're group or individual, and who they are referred by. So did you get the referral from a parent, a teacher? Is it a self-referral? I like to indicate if I've contacted the parent, sent a permission slip, received a permission slip, ask the teacher the ideal meeting time, and finally if I've scheduled the sessions. So this is a great way to make sure no one falls through the cracks. Perhaps, someone hands you a permission slip or a referral form while you're walking in between class lessons and you kind of throw it in your binder and forget about it. This is a great way to keep track of where everyone's at in the counseling process. Now, you're likely already collecting this information without thinking, but having it laid out makes it simple and easy to access. So a few tips. Use different colors to indicate the small groups. So if you're seeing, 4 students in a small group, then I like to highlight them all with the same color. That way when you look at the schedule or at the caseload at a glance, you can see who is together. And if you see a student individually and in a group at the same time, you can write their name twice so you can make sure to specify like what you're seeing them for, but you want to use an asterisk to indicate that you're seeing them twice. That way you don't get confused if later you're counting the number of students that you served for data collection purposes. Okay, moving right along. Strategy number 6, use voice memos to take notes. So I don't know how you're taking notes now. Perhaps you're just writing them on like Post-it notes or pieces of paper. Hopefully you're putting them in your counseling log, but maybe I used to have this clipboard that was just a mess. It was just like kind of a brain dump of sorts where I was writing all kinds of things and then my handwriting was bad. It was a mess. So voice memos really help with this. You are busy and you might not have time to sit down and type in your notes. Like, I get it. You are on the go in between lessons and students and recess duty, whatever. So instead, I encourage you to try recording a voice memo on your phone, or you always use the voice to text feature. So this eliminates those sticky notes and scrap paper notes, which are problematic for a few reasons. 1, you can easily lose them or misplace them. 2, you can easily break confidentiality because other people can see them if they're all over. Or 3, you may not be able to read your own handwriting. That is one that I definitely struggle with. So voice memos are a quick tip to eliminate this problem. Now, our next tip, color code your calendar. So I've talked about how I like to use a Google Calendar. Take advantage of those pretty little colors they have and color code it. This can indicate the type of service that you're providing. So that way, when you sit down at the beginning of the day and open up your schedule, you can see exactly who you're going to see and how to prepare. So, for example, if you have your individual sessions as green and your lessons as blue, you can kind of look at the day and without even reading details, you can see, I've got 2 lessons and 3 individual kids today. So it's just a good way for you to get mentally prepared and organized. Some colors that I recommend, or the areas I recommend you color coordinating, are class lessons, groups, individual sessions, meetings, duty, and you can even get more specific. Like for groups, you can have different color per group, or you can personalize it to fit your needs. Now for strategy number 8, which is the final strategy under our umbrella of organization, is to create a digital to-do list. So who does not love checking off a to-do list? Am I right? Even we are all guilty of writing things we've already done on a to-do list just so we can highlight it or check it off. Like, I've totally done that a million times. I love lists. So I have 3 digital tips for you, or places that you can keep a to-do list, because again, I prefer digital to paper because it's easier to edit, organize. You can access it across devices, easier to share. I don't know, digital's better, right? So the first one is the Notes app. Super simple. This is where I keep all my lists for personal stuff and work stuff. It's native to your Apple products, so that means it's already going to be on your iPhone, iPad, Mac, whatever. And it's great for, like, I have a Mac and an iPhone, and it's great for typing on one and then it shows up on the other. And I'm sure Android products do a similar thing. But I just love that seamless back and forth communication. But Notes is great because you don't even have to download anything. It's already on there. And they now have like features where you can write, you can add photos, you can add like actual check boxes that you can click on. That's my favorite. So that one's great. Then Todoist and Trello. These are 2 more I want to touch on. You can download the apps or use them on desktop. And Trello is more of a project management tool that is like a bunch of visual sticky notes. So if you like the layout of Pinterest, You're going to love Trello. And you can also do check boxes within the notes. So it's a really cool platform. And then Todoist is more of like a pen and paper. It's the digital version of if you had a pen and paper checklist. So just simple check boxes, but you can also set reminders on those as well. So those 3 apps have been instrumental in increasing my efficiency, and I think that you're going to love them too. So let's talk about why you care about being organized. Perhaps you're by nature not a very organized person, and this seems like it's going to be a lot of effort for you, and you're not really sure if the juice is worth the squeeze. Well, let me tell you, it totally is, because this helps us impact more students and get that recognition that we deserve. So the way it does that is if we're organized and efficient, we're going to maximize our impact and see more students. If we're spending less time searching for materials or figuring out what we wrote or figuring out where we put our to-do list, then we can spend more time in direct services with kids. Tracking these services can in turn help us advocate for our role to get the recognition we deserve. So if we share how many students we're seeing and what types of group we're running, you can share this like on your counseling website, in your school newsletter, in your end of the year report. All of that information is super valuable to share, and the way you can get that information is by looking at your caseload, looking at your calendar, looking at your notes that you use to, collect data on what topics that you covered with kiddos. All of these places are ways for you to easily access what you've been up to all year so you can then communicate it with your stakeholders. Now for strategy number 9, we have moved into the final umbrella here. This is our data collection section. So for strategies 9 through 12, I'll focus on data collection. And number 9 is Google Calendar. And you're probably thinking, you already told me about Google Calendar with organization. And I did, but this time I want to tell you how you can use it to track the services you provided. So I told you how you can use a Google Calendar to color code your schedule, which is helpful when you're getting organized. But you can also use that same schedule and calendar to track the services you provided. So whenever we're collecting data, it's important for us to see how many groups we did, how many students we saw, how often we saw them, the duration, the frequency, all of these things. And a great place you can do that is on your calendar. So you're scheduling them out for 8 weeks, and then you can go in and see, oh, I met with this student for 8 weeks. I met with this group for 6 weeks. It's all there in your calendar. But then that leads me into number 10 strategy, which is the combo of the counseling log and caseload spreadsheets, which again, I've also mentioned both of these before, but I want to specifically talk about how you can use them for data collection. So you have your calendar, but then you can use it, you can combine your counseling log and caseload spreadsheets to kind of verify that what's on your calendar is accurate. So remember, your counseling log's going to have the minutes that you saw the student. So your calendar might say 30 minutes you had allotted for them, but maybe you actually only saw them for 20 minutes because something happened, you had to leave early for a fire drill or who knows what. But the counseling log will kind of verify and confirm the Google Calendar session. So it's just another way to double check your data to make sure it's accurate. And your caseload spreadsheet will allow you to see how many students you served, how many groups you led also. So these two strategies kind of go together. By combining the Google Calendar and then those spreadsheets, you can really get an accurate view of the services that you've provided. Now, strategy number 11 for data collection, self-assessments. So self-assessments are one of my all-time favorite data collection tools. They're super simple. It's a quick questionnaire you give students before and after services, so before and after a group or before and after individual sessions, and you're going to ask them some questions to assess their progress. So you can ask them 2 types of questions, objective learned questions and feelings-based questions. So an objective learned question is a right or wrong answer that can be answered objectively. So for example, can you name 5 coping strategies? Yes or no? So maybe in their pre-test they said no, but hopefully after you've been meeting with them, they can answer yes. And then feelings-based questions are more subjective and there's not a definitive correct answer. So for example, maybe it's I feel sad more often than I feel happy. And maybe they're answering yes to that at the beginning, and then maybe after your services, they can say that they can answer no. Or maybe it stayed the same. There's no right or wrong answer for these. It's just a great way for you to collect some data here. So how you can send the self-assessment is you can do a paper version, which is what I primarily used until recently, and then I switched to Google Forms during distance learning, and I won't go back to paper because the digital version is definitely superior. It displays the results in an easy-to-interpret fashion. You can see time-stamped responses, and it's a great way for you to see your student growth, and then you can display the information using pretty charts and graphs because Google makes it super simple if you just click that results tab. So that is a self-assessment. And then for our final tip here, this is tip number 12 and the fourth data collection tip, and that is a behavior progress monitoring survey. So it sounds like a big name, but basically it's also pretty simple. It's just a survey you're sending to parents and teachers before and after services provided so they can rate how their child and student is doing. So the self-assessment is for the kid to do, and this is for the parents and teachers to do. And this is directly related to the behavior. So they're going to notice the student's behavior, pre-intervention and post-intervention, and indicate how it has changed. So you could also do one of these mid-services to ensure that your counseling methods are on the right track, but pre and post is fine, and you can use this feedback to adjust and tweak your program to best serve student needs. So let me give you an example. So if you were sending one on self-esteem, one of the things could be so-and-so advocates for self, and then the options are never, rarely, sometimes, often, or always, almost always. And they could circle that, and then you're going to send the exact same form later and then see how the answers have changed after they've had services with you. So how does data collection help you reach more students and advocate for your role? Well, advocating for your role, it seems kind of obvious, right? You're going to have all this data on the services that you've provided and your students' progress to show your stakeholders. So you're going to have this data and you can advocate for your role in your program using it. But it also helps you reach more students than ever before because you can assess and fine-tune your services to best meet student needs. So once you know a student has progressed, you can then send them on their way back to a lower tier of intervention, and then you can see another student in need. So this helps you reach more kiddos than ever before, and it ensures that what you're doing with your students is effective. So those are my 12 strategies to help you increase your impact and get the recognition you deserve. That was a lot of information, but I hope you're able, just take one or two of these to try this week, and the next week, take another couple to try out. So take your time with it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and be sure to download the freebie I've created for you. So that is the Stress-Free School Counseling Toolkit. So go ahead and download that. I'll link to it in the show notes. I apologize, at the end of this episode, there's kind of some crazy background noise you can maybe hear now. They are doing construction in my building. So I hope that wasn't too distracting. But be sure to grab your freebie, and I will talk to you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.